I'm here with Dr. Karyemaître Aliffe. He was one of the speakers at yesterday's CBD symposium, so thank you for joining us.
Sure, welcome, a pleasure.
Okay, so we have, he covered a lot of ground yesterday. We're going to touch on some key points, and especially for our audience, CBD is very new. A lot of people are, especially in the mass retail, are a little hesitant to jump in. So we're going to talk a little bit about the science behind CBD. So before we get into that, can you give us a little background on yourself and then how you kind of got involved with the CBD industry?
Sure, I've been involved in medicinal natural products ever since I was in college. I did organic chemistry at Harvard undergrad, and that's actually where I started. That's about 40 years ago in medicinal natural products, and then on to Stanford in the cancer bio program, MD, PhD program, continued research in clinical pharmacology. And so I have a great interest in how specific substances work in the human body as medicines, and especially in the natural product space, because they're more complex than regular pharmaceutical drugs. It's not a single molecule, but you have several molecules going on at the same time at work, like in the case of hemp oil.
Okay, and you discussed that a little bit yesterday, how the body, the whole integrated system and everything works. I found that very interesting.
Yes, well,
and complicated,
yeah.
too.
Well, it is more complicated. So it's more complicated than the usual pharmacology. It puts it a little bit out of the reach of the usual approaches of pharmaceutical companies and even academicians, because in the case of hemp oil, with the CBD, there are multiple other molecules in there from other cannabinoids and terpenes that all can exert biological effect. You have multiple bioactive molecules. Hemp has been shown to have upwards of 500 distinct molecules in it. So it's really important to look at the entire system. You can look at individual cells and receptors, but you want to look at a whole person. Sometimes people look at whole animals like mice, and that can be partially relevant, but mice and people primarily are different. And so you really, when you're looking at a drug that is affecting a person in a large way, in a global way, you want to look at systems. And so CBD affects the endocannabinoid system, which was discovered because of research on CBD and THC and cannabis in general. But that system manages the central nervous system, the immune system. It manages other systems like the cardiorespiratory system to manage what's called harm reduction and stress. And so it's very important to look globally and not just as a silver bullet.
Could you give an overview of some of the benefits from CBD in terms of wellness and healing?
Sure. As I mentioned yesterday, two great things about CBD. One, that CBD and the cannabinoids in general is found in hemp oil from the plant, not hemp oil from the seeds. They support the systems that they interact with. They don't simply extract effects, but it actually promotes healing. That's part of that harm reduction. For instance, neuroprotection, when people have stress, anxiety, depression, even as far in as traumatic brain injury, these cannabinoids help the body to engage in the healing process, and there's a certain amount of protection, kind of like putting a person in the hospital. They need to be in a special environment to heal optimally. That's the effect that cannabinoids have on the body. It creates a special environment inside of the body so that people kind of can take it easy and heal, you could say, in a colloquial sense. So, as I mentioned yesterday, I said that CBD is like the new aspirin, and to us nowadays aspirin is so common, but aspirin has lots of effects. It works on everything from fever, cold and flu and headache up to prevention of stroke and heart attack. How can one drug, which actually came from plants originally, like willow bark, how can one molecule, one type of drug affect so many different diseases?
Yeah.
It's because they're connected to certain systems. So aspirin affects certain systems in the body, and that's how we learned about inflammation. Well, CBD works in that space as well, as with respect to inflammation and also aspirin, pain relief. You have pain relief with CBD, with hemp oil. So it's just much more expansive.
Okay.
It moves beyond the level that aspirin is at. So you have people that are helped with arthritis, but also people that are helped with anxiety and depression. It can even help people that are trying to do better in life and have difficulty with social rejection, like interviewing for jobs or or any sort of social interaction at work, and it can help people to manage that stress and perform optimally, improve cognitive function. So it's really like a global, as I mentioned yesterday, a panacea. It really helps a human being become a better human being.
Well, now that poses a challenge for suppliers, because if it heals so many things, you're limited on your packaging to like a certain amount of space.
Right.
You can't put everything.
Right.
How would you recommend, if somebody is developing a product, how do they determine which functions to put on the packaging?
Well, one of those has to do with the formulation and diversity among actual products creation within the hemp oil CBD space. And so as you mentioned, you could have a cream that's topical for back pain or neck pain, sprays in the mouth, there are sublinguals, there are lots of different forms that when you understand the clinical pharmacology, then you understand which format or which delivery system, as it's called, is optimal for which condition. But beyond that, when it comes to packaging, if you notice, with aspirin, over the last 5 to 7 years, I've noticed that in stores, that the packaging of aspirin has expanded and diversified. And now aspirin occupies a huge space, whether it's a generic store like a grocery store or a drugstore. So you'll have a box of aspirin that is for headache, and another box of aspirin that's for cold and flu symptoms.
Or one for heart, like if you have
one for the, and
heart
a small
issues.
pill, it's 80 milligrams. And there's the other one that is for arthritis. All of those have the same drug inside,
It's just
but the
different
package guides the consumer to buy the appropriate product. The tricky part with aspirin is somebody might have, headache, arthritis, cold and flu, and also want to prevent heart attacks. They may buy all four and take all four, and then they're kind of overdosing on the aspirin. The great thing with CBD is we haven't found a level of dosing that's overdosing with CBD. It has a very, very high therapeutic index, as it's called, a very high safety window.
The stigma with, we were talking before about, because the marijuana, CBD, that whole thing, a lot of retailers might shy away from getting involved. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it's being addressed and focused on in the scientific community?
Sure. There are a few fundamentals about cannabis and marijuana that seem to escape people. So one very, very basic aspect is that the marijuana leaf itself, a fresh marijuana plant, has virtually no THC in it. If you consume that directly, like juicing or just eating it whole, it doesn't get you high, okay? It has molecules in there that when you heat them, like by burning and smoking or the processing of fresh marijuana leaves into smokable marijuana, during that process, then some of those molecules get converted to THC. And then again, once it's in the body, the liver converts the THC into another molecule, 11-hydroxy-THC, as I mentioned yesterday, that really is what creates this intoxicating psychotropic effect. Psychotropism or psychoactivity just mean that something affects your mood, your mind. As I mentioned yesterday,
Yes,
even
other
a
things
hug,
do that,
even a hug from your grandkids has a psychotropic effect.
Yeah.
We're talking about intoxication, something that makes it difficult for you to operate machinery or think clearly. That's not from the marijuana plant itself. That's actually from the 11-hydroxy-THC that actually is converted in the body by the liver. So depending on the route of administration, you can bypass that effect. But basically, if you're not heating this hemp oil, when you put it on your body, then how much concern does one need to have about this intoxicating effect? You may feel better. Sometimes people think they're getting high, but it's just because their pain is going away.
Gotcha.
So it really depends on the formulation, the quality of the product itself, and how it's being delivered, what the effect is. So it's really important for the retailers with respect to protecting their consumers and their own brand to really know the products that they have on their shelves and really have like a team in-house that's on their side to, negotiate third-party QA/QC controls to make sure that they're really getting what they were told. Because like I showed yesterday, the FDA and other studies have shown that lots of these CBD oil and hemp oil products do not actually contain the constituents or the quantity of CBD that's listed on their package.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for all that information, and thank you for the presentation
having me.
yesterday. And thank you guys for joining us.